Hello everyone, thank you. Oh, there's a bit of feedback. It might, oh, it's sorted itself out. That's lovely. Okay, so Jade's shared the screen, so we'll keep it under 8 minutes. We'll do our best. So I'll go first, and I'll be passing it on to Jade in a few minutes. Then, so my name is Ellen, and I'm one of the managers here at Menter Môn, a not-for-profit company based on Anglesey and Gwynedd in Northwest Wales. We do have a few pan Wales projects as well, but we're mostly active in Anglesey and Gwynedd and parts of rural Conwy. So Llwyd Lleol 2050 is one of the projects I manage, but here with me today, as I mentioned, is Jade Owen, who's the project officer who coordinated, does all of the hard work behind the project's success. So a bit of background to the Llwyd Lleol 2050 project. Which, by the way, means succeeding locally. That's what Llwyd Lleol means. It means succeeding locally. So I will be referring it as Llwyd Lleol throughout the presentation. So it was first made possible through the Arfor scheme, which was funding given by the Welsh Government to the 4 counties where the Welsh language thrives. And that, of course, includes Gwynedd and Anglesey, where we're based. They wanted to see schemes which would help both the Welsh language and economy thrive side by side. So a project aiming to help young, talented, Welsh-speaking people was a no-brainer for us. Arfor funding lasted 2 years, and that's why we have the 2050 part of the title, which refers to the Welsh Government's aim to ensure 1 million speakers by the year 2050. So after the 2-year period, Menter Môn adopted Llwyd Lleol as our own, and we made it work so we could carry on providing opportunities for local young people. Because we feel that it's too often that we see short-term schemes for young people, but this time we were keen to ensure that the long-term support was given and was tailored to their needs. At the moment, we're able to do this through the support of Leader, and ensuring that we can continue the work contributing to the well-being of Wales and the Welsh language side by side. So what is it? So Llwyd Lleol, it's a project that aims to support young people who want or who are flirting with the idea of laying down their roots in the community. So one of the demographic problems of these rural areas that we live in, and I'm sure that you can relate wherever you are, is the number of young people who decide to leave the area to live and work. So there are various reasons this might be. Problems seem to think that the cities have more to offer. People seem to think that rural areas are lagging and aren't developed enough. And we're not here to argue that these points aren't valid. We just aim to have an honest conversation about life in rural Wales, the good and bad. We see a high number of young people in this area leaving year after year, and so Llwyd Lleol aims to help combat this issue by, number one, giving young people the opportunity to see the untapped potential of starting a business or finding quality jobs locally. And 2, we aim to make sure that there is enough noise about these stories of success. There are so many people who do stay, but I don't think that we give them enough attention, and we don't think we make enough noise around these case studies, if you like. So it's more than just a scheme to offer support. It's a campaign which draws attention to the possibilities. And to challenge the myth that in order to succeed, then you will definitely have to leave. So, of course, by supporting these young people to stay local, or even persuade some of them to return, we hope to strengthen the Welsh language and make sure people who are able to speak it, make sure that they have an option to stay. So how does the project work? Well, the first cohort began in the summer of 2020, right as the pandemic was heavily affecting the whole country. And it left many young people who had expected to go to either university, to start a job, leaving them quite confused and wondering what their next step would be. So the scheme came at an opportune moment, to be honest, and the project originally welcomed 14 young people aged 18 to 24 to embark on a 10-week entrepreneurial program to help them develop their own business idea. During this period, the young people receive training, mentorship through the Enterprise Hub, which is in another team based with Mentormon, as well as £1,000 to assist with their business. So we've since repeated the programme with a few tweaks, a further 2 times, the second being in January 2021, where we welcomed 7 young people, and the third is currently running right now. So we've also designed a phase 2 support scheme for those who are keen and who are developing fast to make sure that we see their success through, as well as appointing a few of these young people involved as ambassadors who will now work with other young people in their community, in their peer groups, to share these key messages, that we have what we need right here on our doorstep. So in working with these young people, we're eager to provide them with support they need to succeed, and also showcase the variety of businesses that exist and flourish in North Wales already. So we make sure that we support them from all sorts of industries, and over the past 2 years, we've supported the food and drink industry, technology, photography, clothing, music, art, sports, mental health, and we are looking into environmental and agricultural cohorts to come up over these next few months. So an essential element of the project is that the young people share their business journeys with others through social media, podcasts, radio interviews, as much noise as we can around these stories. And as I said, it's more than just a scheme to offer work and opportunities, it's a campaign, and we want to showcase these opportunities that exist for young people here in Gwynedd and Anglesey. So on that note, I'm now going to pass on to Jade, who will share with you some examples of those who've been involved over the past few months. So over to you, Jade.
Thanks, Ellen. So just to run through a couple of case studies, I've had the joy of working with 30 young people over the last 2 years, and I could go on for hours about how amazing they all are and the amount of work that they've done. But yeah, like I said, I'm going to focus on 2. So the first one is Tom. He's from Carnarvon in Gwynedd, and he came to the scheme in January of 2020, and he had the idea of starting a smoothie business. He'd been to America and seen the businesses over there and was inspired and thought, there's nothing like this in my area and I want to do something about it. So he took part, and there's a photo of Tom just starting out selling smoothies out of his car to some friends, and through the help of the scheme, through the 10 weeks, and also the other scheme that Ellen was mentioning, are kind of after the 10-week process scheme, he was then able to have the support that he needed to buy his own van, and he launched his business in the summer of 2021 and has been doing amazingly, selling smoothies across Gwynedd and Anglesey, and has now become full-time working on his business and is an ambassador for Swig on Sale, and we're currently going to be supporting him even further with his business to develop it by taking on a young person as a member of staff, and then also giving Tom training as an employer so that he is able to continue to develop his business as it goes on. So our second case study is Alau. She was fantastic, so hardworking. She came to the scheme in January of 2021, and she wanted to renovate this old horse trailer and create it into a functioning gin bar, which she would take across Gwynedd and Anglesey. And there's a photo of her right at the beginning of the scheme, had just mucked out the horse trailer, and here is her 6 months later, having renovated the trailer and ready to go to her first booking. She was she's a mother of 2. She's based in the Llyn Peninsula, and yes, since renovating the trailer, she also gained valuable skills and has become an engineering apprentice alongside her business. So Some lessons that we've
30
learned.
seconds, Jade. Sorry.
Sorry, yeah, that's fine. I'll quickly go through the lessons that we've learned. So it's so important to be able to provide these young people the support that they need, the financial and the mentorship, so that they're able to develop their businesses. Like Ellen has discussed, we put a great emphasis on being able to embrace your local area and your culture and language and use that in your business and use it to your benefit. The importance of sharing these members' stories to inspire other young people. That's how we've had a lot of young people join the scheme further on, is by hearing the stories from the first cohort and being inspired and wanting to follow the same journey. And then, of course, there's practical learning, making sure that we get feedback from these young people, that we're tailoring these programmes to fit their needs. And as any scheme, it's not perfect. We are learning as we go along and making sure that we tailor it to the needs of these young people. So, as I'm aware that we're short on time, I'll say, diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you both, Jade and Ellen. And I think it's Llwyl Liol. Is that how I'm supposed to say it?
Yeah, llwyddo. Yeah.
That's okay. I'm learning. Good.
There we go.
Okay. So thank you very much for that. Okay. We'll move now to our next speaker, Rachel Parker, who's from Eyemouth in our Scottish borders. That's part of Colin Smith and my South Scotland region. And I see Colin Smith and Rhoda Grant are here, MSPs, and Jenny Minto also. So it's always good practice to shout out the names of the MSPs that are attending, because our cross-party group commitments are always very busy. So Rachel has been working to set up the Frangipane Bakery as a social enterprise, alongside studying and doing lots of other things too, including winning a UK Young Innovators Award this year. And Rachel was previously recognised as one of the top 100 women in social enterprise in the UK. So Rachel, I am going to hand over to you.
Thank you. So as Emma just said, I'm Rachel and I'm setting up the Frangipane Bakery. This first slide is a quick one-page summary of the business before I go on to explain some of the support that I've had to get to this point. It will be a dedicated gluten-free bakery producing high-quality artisan products so that people who require a gluten-free diet can experience the same joy from food as everyone else. In the process, it will help to close the disability employment gap, bringing the dignity of a meaningful and worthwhile job to people who are too often excluded from the workforce, despite their willingness and desire to take part. Both the business and social enterprise aspects are based on my own lived experience. I've required a strictly gluten-free diet for over 15 years now. In 2014, I visited a 100% gluten-free patisserie in Paris, and was so overwhelmed with excitement that I left with cakes for lunch, dinner and breakfast the next day. That's a feeling that I want to share with others. I've also had my share of challenges in education and employment, which were largely explained when I finally received an autism diagnosis at the age of 25. But my experience isn't unique. The ONS outcomes for disabled people in the UK statistics are horrific. In 2020, 81.3% of non-disabled people were in employment, compared to 53.6% of disabled people overall. However, only 21.7% of autistic people like me are in any form of employment. That's a 60 percentage point difference. This is despite the findings of the National Autistic Society that the majority of autistic people want to work, and those that are employed often want to work more hours or are underemployed for their skill level. I was asked to focus this presentation on the challenges I've experienced in setting up a business and how I've overcome them or the impact that they've had. This business should be 5 years old and should have been based in Argyll. However, the flat I was living in and had passed through environmental health and set up my business in was sold by the landlord, so I had to leave. I wasn't able to find a new home, and the council wanted to move me over 2 hours drive away from my customers and the community that I'd become a part of. Rather than go somewhere that I knew no one, I moved in with my parents who had just moved to the Borders, hence why I'm now setting up the business from Eyemouth. Not being able to stay where I'd started my business and already had customers and contacts was a huge setback. It's taken a long time to settle back down and establish the local connections and contacts I need and really build up the confidence and motivation to give it all another go. My business journey really started with entering the Business Ideas competition run by Create Highland at Inverness College UHI. I'm really grateful that when I was faced with challenges with my health and education, that I had people around me who encouraged me to enter this competition as an alternative way to move forwards. I went on to win both the Best Student Business and the overall top prize in the 2016 competition, which included funding and legal support. But most importantly for me, the process and judges' feedback validated my idea as something that was viable and achievable and worth continuing to pursue. Following that, I was also shortlisted in the Scottish Institute for Enterprise Fresh Ideas competition and the Converse Challenge Kickstart competition in 2017. More recently, whilst volunteering on the Rural Youth Project Smart Village, the project coordinators encouraged me to enter the Innovate UK's Young Innovators Award in a bid to revive my business ambitions. Again, I've been successful in receiving an award, one of only 5 young people in Scotland. I'm very aware, though, that I've been lucky in my circumstances, both in being in higher education, which some of the competitions require, and by being involved in voluntary opportunities that have connected me with people who have often had more belief in me than I've had in myself and encouraged me to pursue these opportunities. I'm aware that not everyone has those opportunities, though. For example, there's no traditional further or higher education provision in Berwickshire, where I live now, and not everyone has the support networks to provide the encouragement and confidence needed to enter a competitive process to access business support. Business competitions have been very valuable for me, but I also feel that the general business support needs to be considered. My initial experience of more general business support in Argyll was from a business gateway advisor who provided outreach support in the town once a fortnight. In my first contact with them, I was asked, "Why on earth do you think you'll be able to do this when you can't even hold down a normal job?" This was very discouraging, and I didn't feel supported or like they were trying to understand my situation. I was left doubting that what I wanted to do was really possible, achievable, and realistic, despite the reassurance from my GP and OT and the success that I'd had in business competitions. I feel that the less support there is available, the more important it is that the service is of a high quality and inclusive of differing circumstances and experiences. Once at the Borders, I tried to access specialised autism-specific business support. Unfortunately, that support wasn't available locally. It was based in Edinburgh. Appointments were strictly in-person only and would not be done virtually or over the phone. With no public transport available and my difficulties in driving to unfamiliar places, I was reliant on family support to attend the appointments. This added an additional layer of complications and ultimately meant that I couldn't continue with that support as I couldn't get there by myself. I've also accessed general programmes through the likes of the Prince's Trust and even the group training sessions and workshops as part of the business competitions I've been involved in. But I found it quite difficult to really know how that general information relates specifically to my business. This is especially the case with setting up a social enterprise rather than a traditional business. It's been access to one-to-one, individualised support that's been invaluable in getting me this far. As a young person, I don't have a high-flying, well-paid job that I can just cut to half-time and still survive. I'm a part-time student finishing off my degree through the Open University, and I need to do the work I do in order to keep my health and stay fed. I'm also not in a position with my health to add on lots of extra hours to my day to set up the business late in the evenings and weekends. That's a situation I'm sure many other young people, especially those with health needs or caring responsibilities, will share. This is where the living allowance payment as part of the Young Innovators Award is really helping me. Over the course of 12 months, I'm being paid for 15 hours a week at the real living wage rate to focus on the business launch. This allows me to reduce the hours I do in paid work while still maintaining my finances and health and giving me the time to dedicate to my business. So in terms of key messages based on what's helped me, for business support, it needs to be inclusive and specific to each individual, ideally with young people specific support included in the general offering, not just access through college or university business competitions. I really appreciate the support that I've been getting from Jill Miller and Business Gateway, and now through the Young Innovators Awards from Lorna McLean in Scottish Enterprise and Tara Boland, the business coach for youth-led enterprises at South of Scotland Enterprise. There also needs to be support for rural areas in general, so that we can keep living here to be able to set up our enterprises. I'm very grateful to now have my own flat through Berwickshire Housing Association with a secure tenancy agreement, so I can make longer term plans and not need to constantly worry about a private landlord terminating my tenancy. Rather than formal business networking events that might happen in cities, it's networks and connections I've developed through my involvement with voluntary and community activities that's encouraged me to enter the business competitions and also led to me being able to recruit fellow directors for the business to fill the skills gaps in my own experiences. There are, however, some challenges I've not yet been able to overcome. The biggest barrier to me launching my business is the need to find a suitable premises. The local business startup pods don't have planning permissions for food production, as it's an industrial process, but the plots available on the local industrial estates are too big for a new startup business, so I'm caught in a gap with neither option being suitable for my business's needs. Given the difficulties with public transport locally, not running regularly enough and not linking all the towns without first having to go down to Berwick and wait for a change of bus, I'm having to explore providing a minibus service or funding taxis to ensure that the training and employability programme can be accessed by anyone in the Berwickshire area who would like to take part. I hope you found my experiences helpful, and if you'd like to get in touch to discuss any of it further, please feel free to add me or send me a message on LinkedIn. I'll pop a link to it in the chat as well.
Brilliant, thank you. Thanks, Rebecca. I'm seeing Rebecca, it's Rachel. Rebecca's coming up. Thank you very much for that. That was really interesting, and actually I see some comments saying that thank you for bringing gluten-free to Scotland, so thank you very much. Okay, I will move on to our third speaker. That's Emily Armstrong, who is from the Isle of Tiree. Emily is 16 years old and has been working hard on her Highland cattle business, amongst other things. Emily, over to you.
Hi, so my name is Emily and I'm 16 and I'm from Tiree, and basically what I do is run a small fold of Highland cattle based on Tiree. I moved to Tiree when I was 1, back to a family croft, and from then we've kind of just like took it on and did all the day-to-day kind of work. The cattle were wait for this to load. The cattle were kind of mainly me and my dad's kind of thing, and after him passing in 2016 due to a brain tumour, I kind of took it on because it was the kind of thing that we both kind of love to do together, and this kind of motivated me to kind of keep going with it and hopefully do it for the rest of my life type of thing. The biggest challenge for me initially was definitely trying to start it out by myself and carry it on without him guiding me through it and all that kind of stuff. I've had so much support from everyone in the Highland cattle business, and even just like the grants you get from the government, sometimes they go a long way. Running the croft is it's like a full-time thing, and I'm also at school and I'm sitting my hires this year. I've got 5 hires soon, and then in summer we've got a cafe that we run just in the summer months, which my mum runs. And yeah, you can go on to the next slide. Okay, so Ballymartin Fold was established in 2008 when my mum basically bought my dad 2 Highland cows for his 40th birthday, as a joke really. But from the start, he kind of loved it, and then quickly after, I kind of fell in love with the breed as well. Since then, the quality of the cattle that I breed has like improved hugely, and I've been becoming more successful like throughout the years that I've been doing it myself. We just now have 8 breeding cows in total, and they're all due to start calving in the middle of March. Yeah. You can go to the next slide. Over the last 5 years that I've been doing it myself, I've finally started to build up a reputation in what seems like a very much so male-orientated world. And it's quite an achievement to kind of build yourself up, especially because I'm so young, to finally have people recognise me for what I'm doing and that I am doing it by myself, which not many people believed at the start. And when I first started, I was only 12 years old, and the only help that I really got was from my mum and the paper side of kind of things, and from some other people with the Highland Cattle kind of business. It was very tough at times, but I kind of just pushed through it because I kind of loved working with them and didn't really want to give it up, because I didn't think my dad would want me to give it up either. I've had quite a few successes throughout the last 5 years, and I've won multiple Young Handler awards and all these different types of awards. Like in February just there, I won Reserve 3-year-old Heifer and Best Exhibited. But the best award that I won by myself is winning Reserve Overall Female Champion with a yearling heifer that I bred myself and everything. We only started selling cattle about 10 years ago, but in those 10 years, it is built up to be quite popular, you could say. I've managed to sell cattle across Scotland and parts of England, and also some to Italy and Germany and France, and a Canadian who is trying to export different cattle and different bloodlines back to Canada, where just now it's not allowed. You can go to the next slide. So along with doing everything else I'm doing, I'm trying to set up like a cow grooming business as well, where tourists who visit the island are going to have the opportunity to come and be up close and personal with a Highland cow, because everyone seems to love them nowadays. So I thought I might as well try and let them come and see them really close. Mine are so chilled out that you could literally walk up to them and they'd do nothing to you. So I thought they were the ideal breed to kind of kick this business off. So hopefully by the summer months, this will all be going ahead smoothly if my plans go ahead. You can go into the next slide. You can move to the next slide. Yeah. So Calmac ferries are the lifeline to locals all across the islands, and to get to Tiree it takes 3.5 hours from Owen, and you also stop on the way there and the way back to Call. The other way to get to the island is by going by plane, and this only takes about under an hour to get to Glasgow. But one of the main issues we have with living on the islands is that when you're trying to get away to the mainland, the expenses are so high, it's sometimes quite unbelievable. And as locals, Calmac don't give us any sort of discounts or anything to try and go towards going away for business trips. So when me and my family want to go away for, say, sales, or if anybody wants to go away for anything, it's an extra 150 quid, but then you're also adding on all the accommodation, night stays, so it all kind of adds up to quite a lot for just a day's worth of selling things. So I feel like this needs to be highlighted, because locals from the Hebrides try to make a living out of what they're doing, and I feel like if you're trying to make a living out of something on an island, you shouldn't have to pay so much more extra than if you were doing it on the mainland, where you'd just be paying extra fees for the fuel costs and different things like that. And because currently I'm not 17 yet, so I can't drive, but But once I do turn 17, I'm still going to have to pay the cost of trying to get away, and I'll still be at school full time, and I won't be able to get a full-time job. So I'm not going to be able to pay for it as easily, which is it puts quite a limit on different things I can do. So for say shows that I want to go to on the mainland, I can't necessarily get away for them, because if I've got to work or do different things like that, I'm never going to make it there. Or you have to add up all the costs of the accommodation and things like that. It just doesn't really work out. Even flying for locals, the prices go up as soon as the summer months hit. It's just sky highs, and I don't think it's fair that locals should still be paying the same amount as all the tourists that come up and all these different things. And it does cause problems for people who might be struggling financially already, and they're trying to get off the island for work purposes or any sort of important purposes, and they've got to pay 150 quid extra than anybody else. And this also affects me trying to build the business up a bit more and trying to get my name out there, because how am I meant to go to different shows if I can't pay to get on the boat, basically? Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I took a few notes there actually, and I like the idea that you've got chilled out Highland coos that allow you to set up a cow grooming part of the businesses, which is interesting as well. That's great. Right, thank you, Emily. Let me find my notes. Okay, fourth speaker is Teresa Cadigan, who is from Cape Clear, Ireland's southernmost inhabited Gaeltacht island. Teresa is going to talk us through her work to set up her local farmers market and how this has led to other roles. Over to you, Teresa.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to speak on this panel, and especially on International Women's Day. Everyone's story has been so inspiring. Sorry, I think I've frozen. Have I? Oh no, I'm back. I'm Teresa. I'm from Cape Clear Island, which is Ireland's most southerly inhabited island. It's an offshore island. I'm not quite as far out as you, Emily. We're only 50 minutes on the boat, but I 100% understand the struggle with transport and rural areas. I think everyone has noted that. But yes, so I set up the local farmers market back in 2020, but the story behind the farmers market started back in 2019 when I went to the Rural Youth Project Ideas Festival, and it came from an ideas generating session. And the idea of being in a rural area and you don't quite have access to the different food ranges, like not half as much as a city when you have takeaways and you have all the different restaurants. And cut to the pandemic when everyone had to live at home. I was in university, went back home because we were sent home. And I realized that on the island, there's loads of produce and there was amazing ranges of farmers and producers, and there was nowhere locally to buy them. We have a shop, but there was nowhere specific to buy island only products. So I set out to create a farmers market. I sent out a survey to gauge the market, do a bit of market research, and it came back with flying colours. So a few months later, we set it up in summer of 2020, and we had about 10 different stalls with everything ranging from baked goods, vegetables, crafts, and everything that was sold at the market was produced or made on the island, which was an amazing achievement. It also highlighted the sustainable food systems, especially last year being the UN Year for Sustainable Food Systems, which we're always trying to encourage in rural areas, is eating local, buying local, supporting the local economy. And following on from that, we are into our second year, going into our third year of the farmers market. It's going very successfully. I kind of pulled back last year as it kind of ran itself, which was a really, really good achievement. Proved that it kind of worked, that you just kind of need someone there, like a person just to set it up. I set it up with two others. There was myself, the local development officer, who
is an amazing support system. As one of the challenges of setting up a business that I feel like everyone has encountered is support, where you go, who to speak to, especially because different regions have different policies, and especially to do with food, it was health policies and insurance, which I don't really know about. So that's why the amazing support of a local development officer is so important. And also, I think one of the other challenges I overcame was the idea of having a focal point, and this would definitely be a key takeaway from it, is to have a place where young people can go to for support. So if it's the likes of your development officer, if it's the likes of the Rural Youth Project, who have been amazing. And this has led to, following on from the farmers market, I'm in the process of setting up a Irish Islands Youth Forum, so like that, a focal point for where young people in islands can get together. It's a support network and somewhere for young people in rural areas in Ireland to get together and to actually even socialise, because that is an issue in rural areas, is population. So they don't often have enough population. So the idea of that intergenerational learning that everyone keeps speaking about now, since I've moved to a city, people speak about, but in a rural area, I feel like that's a given, because we don't actually have the population to be picky about who you do and don't want to hang out with and who you want to help. There just isn't the population, which is people who grow up in a city often struggle to get their head around. And also, since the farmers market, I've joined my local development co-op. They've been amazing support in the whole farmers market. And again, I think once you join something like this, you don't realise how much they have to offer to a rural area, and the amount of supports, not only by providing grants or telling you where to get grants and guiding you, but also just in general, they support the island infrastructure. And I think we love to boast that we're probably the most age diverse co-op board in Ireland. I think I'm in my early 20s and we go up to about 60 odd retirement age. So it's amazing to think that there's that many different opinions and everyone's opinion is valued. And finally, I think in general, again, transport, housing, for my takeaways from what I've experienced setting up an enterprise or setting up a social enterprise with the island community, was transport and openness. So if it's openness to new ideas coming into the island, because you have to deal with opinions and you have to deal with different people's personalities, is always a big challenge. And the idea of having these enterprises and supporting them, because we do need the population. Because without young people or without new people coming to the area, these enterprises and these amazing initiatives just won't happen. So yes, thank you very much.
Great. Teresa, thank you very much for that. And another very interesting presentation as well. You are all doing fantastic tonight. I said Mon the lassies earlier and I mean it actually. So we've got a final speaker is Rebecca Dawes, who is Director of the Rural Youth Project. Rebecca is going to offer us some reflections on the experiences of that our speakers have outlined, which will also draw on her own personal experience and her work with the Rural Youth Project. Rebecca, over to you.
Thank you, Emma. I think I've got the most difficult job trying to sum up our amazing speakers this evening. So yes, as Emma said, I am one of the directors alongside my colleague Jane Craig in marketing for the Rural Youth Project, and we launched it in 2018 to really support and help young people who maybe live in a rural area find out more about their own skills and also the networks that surround them. And it was very, very much initially a survey-based project. We were looking to get some research to help share with Scotland and wider networks to support our own individual projects and activities, but it quickly spawned into something a bit more, and we've had, to date, we've had nearly 1,700 young people engage with us through research or through our events to find out more about how they can support themselves. And enterprises is one of those key areas that tonight I'm going to focus on. So we heard Rachel and Tressa both talk about the infrastructure challenges, and it's certainly something that's been a key highlight from our research. The access to public transport, rural broadband hasn't come up, but that is quite often in our research. And the challenges around housing have all had real impact to the young people we've been working with and potentially setting up a business in a rural area. And that infrastructure has also included getting access to local properties or local buildings. So, for example, quite a lot of towns and villages have redundant buildings at the moment that are vacant, but actually trying to get to the local council to find out how to maybe utilise those on a short-term let for 6 months to trial a business has been quite challenging in some parts of Scotland from the research we've been finding. Rachel also talked about a lack of confidence and belief, and she certainly doesn't need to have a lack of it. She's got oodles and oodles of skills and experience, and we've been delighted to work with Rachel over the last few years. But that lack of confidence and belief is something that we have found been fundamental. One of the main problems instilling and giving young people the confidence needs time, and it's about building trust and building relationships, which are often things that need to take a longer legacy, but it's about how you and who you engage with. So we've found that the feedback we've had is quite often the support network, in the nicest sense possible, are quite more senior peers, and actually young people want to engage and support with their own peers. So the Rural Youth Project Smart Village that Rachel mentioned was developed and created by a group of 15 young people. They told us what they wanted on the site, and we then actioned on their wishes, and that worked really successfully with a slightly older team acting as support for them behind the scenes. Creative methods for networking and support is something that continues to come up, and we wanted to be creative when we set up the Rural Youth Project. So we don't do formal board meetings, and everything is about having fun. So we've done 2 ideas festivals that have been out and about on farms or in rural locations. They've been residential, and they've brought up to 100 young people together to, in a safe and open space, share their thoughts, and that's where we first met Tressa. So that space and having a creative platform has really generated many successful business ideas. And Ellen mentioned about tapping into untapped potential. It's by encouraging them to look at creative ways and solutions for example, brainstorming ideas, that we've been able to develop some of that untapped potential. And every opinion valued. Tressa, you mentioned it, the openness and the trust that we've found through our network has been key, but also giving them that confidential space to talk about their ideas, and actually no idea is a silly idea, and giving them that reassurance. Now, when we first did our research, 81% of those that we polled said that they lived where they did because it was an emotional connection. So they were either living there because their parents did, or a partner. And whilst that is really reassuring, it also demonstrated where they live in there out of obligation. So 45% of those further said that they actually found it really difficult to get the work that they wanted to where they lived, and the thought of setting up their own business hadn't even crossed their mind. It was quite daunting, and they didn't really know where to go to start. So that piece around connection and giving them access and providing sight of where the support networks are perhaps isn't quite connected yet, and there needs to be better connections. We also found that the average earnings of young people in rural areas was lower than those of their peers in urban areas, and that in itself was a real worry. They had the same level of skills, they had the same education, but they were still earning less, despite some of the concerns, like Emily mentioned, about living in a rural area and additional costs. The other thing that we found, and this is a statistic we've shared quite often, is only 13% of those that completed our survey felt that they had a say in their rural community. So they felt they didn't have a place in their rural community, which I think was probably one of our most concerning statistics. And as such, they didn't feel setting up a business was their right. They were too young to be doing that. So we found mentoring and connecting them with their older peers, and that intergenerational support has been really valuable in changing that perception. When we collated all of the research, we wanted to really look at what our core objectives were, and in 2021, so the end of last year, as we came out of the pandemic, we released a manifesto, and that manifesto was the asks of all those young people we've been working with. And I'd like to read that today, because I think that's probably the most powerful thing that we can share with the ministers on the call today. What are the asks in terms of enterprise? So the first was to remove barriers and improve signposting and increase access to seed funding for rural young people to establish entrepreneurial ventures. And that was highlighted how impactful a small grant can be of £500 to £1,000. It doesn't need to be big sums of money, but it can be enough to give somebody that confidence We've just taken on a young Kickstarter who had never worked before and is now considering running his own marketing business doing film. It's giving them that chance. The second ask was to raise business confidence in themselves and create more opportunities for young people to build meaningful mentorships with experienced business leaders and finding platforms to do that. The third ask was to foster a creation of rural hubs that are invested in the local economic growth by creating more co-working areas within existing private business premises or repurposed rural buildings, such as those that are redundant in villages and towns. The fourth was to encourage disruptive business ideas relevant to place that communities will achieve net zero goals and well-being, and being open to those ideas. So Tressa mentioned earlier that openness of ideas is something that was cited by young people as a real ask. There was a support to young people in community land ownership and other community-centred business models. So Rachel's comment about getting access to a property has come up with land as well and getting a start on the business ladder. And their last key ask was to consider creating rural youth business funds where young people can apply for business and social enterprise startup grants that are specific for young people in rural locations. 30% of those that we polled said that they want greater access to business and enterprise support, and that was the first and key activity they needed. It wasn't about money, it was about time, and it was about people giving them the confidence to set up their business. Over the next 6 months, we're really excited to be taking that one step further. So we are taking a Rural Youth Project hack to Hoy 2 weeks' time, and to Huntly. And we're taking 2 to the Dumfries and Galloway region, which is where I'm based, and 2 to the Scottish borders. And the purpose of these hacks is to look at the challenges in those rural areas and then hack out new business ideas and enterprises that could be delivered in those rural regions. And what we hope is that the networks here today and the young people that we are talking to will come forward and will help communities look differently at their rural regions. So I think that's all I've got to say for today, Emma, but if anybody would like to reach out to the Rural Youth Project, please don't hesitate to get in touch. We would welcome anybody with very much open arms.